Welcome. This is Tobin with Tobin's Throwbacks. Today I want to talk to you about feeler gauges and how to use them to measure blade gap on a safety razor. This is my feeler gauge. These are called blades. I believe my feeler gauge has 22 blades. You can get them with anywhere from 12 up above 30. I think I've seen them with like 32. I paid around $6 for this on Amazon. In my opinion, the only three that you really need, and that's the three that I use the most, is 0.020 of an inch, or if you use the metric system, 0.505 millimeters. And then there's the 0.025 of an inch, or 635 millimeters, 0.635 millimeters. And then there's the 0.005, and that's 0.127 on the millimeters. So blade gap, just real briefly for those who don't know, blade gap is the distance between the blade and the bottom plate or safety bar. So the area between the blade and the razor is the blade gap. So this blade gap is, big enough to drive a truck through. With your vintage Gillettes, this is a contract tech. This one here is commonly referred to as a pre-war tech. They both have a 0.025 blade gap or 0.653 millimeter blade gap. Same head, different handle, same era. The contract was only made for a little while. I love the handle on these. That's probably my favorite handle, really, to be honest. I love the contract tech handle. Here's my gold one here. My 0.025. I have a blade in here. Let's talk about blades real quick. It's extremely important that you use an old blade. There's an old 3-hole Gillette. We won't be using one today. It's got one here so you can hear it. And see how thick that is. 1931, Gillette came out with the new Gillette blade. A little thinner, but still very thick. That one didn't last very long, had some problems with the coating, and was only really around for about a year, actually on the market, and then they started pulling them off the market. My favorite to use, most common, is from the late 30s, early 40s, Blue Blade. You can tell one right away because they still have the patent number on the blade. The patent numbers is something that Gillette took off of most of the blades, and you can see right down here at the bottom is those patent numbers. The thinner ones are the ones that they made for the dispensers, and they have the arrows on them. Let's listen. 3-hole, 1931. 1930s, and then dispenser 1950s. And the blue blade with the dispensers is basically just the thin. They're the same blade, essentially, different coating maybe. So with all that in mind, I highly recommend using a thick blade. These razors were made with thick blades in mind because that's what was being used at the time. They don't bend, as you can see. They really do not bend. Ooh, and that's why they will break. These guys, the newer ones, like here's a Vosshad or Vostock, you can bend them. They won't break. They're so thin, platinum strangelet. Modern blades are so thin that you can bend them all day long and they won't break. Now you can't snap them in half, or if you try to snap them and fold it back onto itself, it'll snap. Nope, look at that. It's still not even snapping. Sometimes they will though. And that's an Astra. I'm able to fold an Astra there. By folding it all the way, I forced it onto itself. It finally snapped. But these modern blades are so thin, they're made to move with our modern razors, as to where these old Gillettes, they're so rigid, they don't bend. I can't tell you, it's critical that when you measure blade gap, that not only do you have a blade in it, but that if it's a vintage razor, you're using a vintage blade. That's what it was designed for, and that's how you're going to get an accurate reading. If you're using, a modern razor, then you could probably use a modern blade to get an accurate result. Two different types of blade gaps, right? So you have a fixed blade gap, like what's on this ball end tech from the 1950s. It has a .020, which is, and a lot of people say that the techs are mild, and that's because people generally are accustomed to the ball end, and the .020 is very mild. In fact, Feather's ASD2 is modeled after this, and they both have the exact same measurements: the blade gap, the blade angle, the exposure. When you buy an ASD2, you're basically buying a $200 ball end tech that you can get for me for about $25, sometimes more. This one's really nice. These are all from my personal collection. These techs are. And then the other type of blade gap, of course, so you have fixed blade gap. You can't change it. It's one setting. And then you have adjustable blade gap. And the whole, name adjustable, you're adjusting the gap, right? I know a lot of us seasoned guys would totally know that, but just in case anyone watching doesn't know it. So the contract tech has the same head as the pre-war tech, 1938 to 1945 fat handle tech, commonly known as the pre-war tech. They both have the same head, and they both have a .025 blade gap, more aggressive than your typical ball. Right, both of these ball ends from the 1950s are on the mild side. This 1932, not made in 1932, that's the model name, made in Canada, is very aggressive. It has the same blade gap as a red tip, .030 of an inch, but the angle is slightly more aggressive than a red tip. I don't have a .030 blade, right? These are called blades. I don't have a 30 blade, so I use my third grade math skills. I take a .05, 005, and a 025, put them together. My third grade math skills says that is now 030, and it's not going to fit. And you don't ever want to force it, guys. If it comes up and it's like, doesn't want to go, you only want to have these things as snug as you would when you're shaving it, so tighten it, back it off a scotch, just like you would when you're going to shave with it. This is my 1932, so it's going to have a 30 blade gap. For the people using the metric system, that's 0.762 millimeters. So just hold them together. You slide it under and give it a little wiggle wiggle. Move it over, wiggle wiggle. Now with this guy here, let's pull out my 20. Let's see if I can get a better view. We're going under the blade. Let's see if I can get the focus in right here. Focus in. There we go. It's a little better. We're going to come under the blade. See there? Don't force it ever. Don't want to force it. Just put it under there. Wiggle it. You see that I got it in there, right? I think this might be a better angle right here. Ooh, I like that. See there? That's all the more it is, guys. Just sticking it in there. That's really about it. Just make sure you're using an old thick blade. The thicker the better. And again, sound, you'll know it when you hear it. Sounds like a diving board, and it has the spring of a diving board. Boing. This is rigid and stiff. Oh, see, I broke another one. They don't like to bend. So I hope this helps. I had a few different people reach out to me asking me about it. Working on a video for you, trying to get the right angles down so that I can show you how I take these old flare tips apart. In my next video, I'm going to show you how I do that. And coming up, I'll be giving away these two razors from my previous videos that I cleaned up. We'll take these two apart and then we'll give them away. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a good night.